Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started here in just about a minute. I'm just going to get everyone about, a minute or two to get in and get settled. So again, we'll start here in just a minute. All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get things started this morning. Thanks so much for spending some of your morning with us. We're really excited for this webinar today, and we have a lot to share with you guys. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm Katie, the marketing manager here at RTOS, and I'll be your host for today. I've been in the tech world for about 5 years now, and I'm joined by two other great speakers, and I'll just briefly introduce them to you guys as well. On the far left here, you'll see RTOS CEO Deepak Sood. Deepak has been a data archiving expert for almost 20 years now. He's presented on numerous topics at various SAP events and regularly contributes his expertise to enterprise business leaders. Next to him, you'll see Big ID co-founder and CPO Nimrod Bax. Nimrod has over 15 years of experience in enterprise security software and identity management, serving various capacities ranging from engineering and product and business management. Now that you guys have gotten a brief introduction of your speakers, excuse me, I'm just going to quickly run through the agenda before handing things over to Deepak and Nimrod. So, as you guys know, today's webinar is all about the critical piece you're missing when dealing with your enterprise data. We all know that so much has changed in the past few years regarding data privacy, and data and consumer trust is more important now than ever. We'll discuss problems you guys may be facing, such as scale, unstructured data, and ever-evolving regulations. Next, we'll go into how data relationships across your SAP and non-SAP systems impact your data privacy needs, and also how to utilize some e-discovery tools across your enterprise data and linked document management platforms. Deepak and Nimrod will share some pro tips on how to develop a framework for privacy and risk management by going beyond compliance, as well as how to build a life cycle from creation to disposition for data and documents. Towards the end, we'll go over how file clustering helps with file classification at scale and how you can make metadata work for you across silos with quick integrations and applications. And finally, we'll wrap up with some customer stories and then a brief Q&A. And with all that being said, I'll go ahead and hand things over to Deepak. Deepak?
Thank you, Katie. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this webcast. We are very excited to present this new webinar around how the data discovery, e-discovery process, data privacy, and the implementation of those solutions in the SAP environment especially is adding so much value. And we have a very amazing product out here called the Big ID product, which is an SAP Solex, and how it is intertwined in making all of those things happen. We have a pretty exhaustive agenda. We are also going to show you some demos and how to put this process together. So I'm not going to spend a lot of times on the slides, but if there is any question, if you have some more clarifications, please type in and we'll be happy to address all of those things as we are progressing through the presentation. So to start with, let's address data privacy as a concern. I mean, with all the things that have, been taking place, whether it is, from the past, from different areas where the systems were hacked, the privacy details, the password were revealed and all, we find a good number of, Americans or, citizens, they do not have a lot of confidence in how the data is being managed. Now, there are a lot of those things that are coming along, and with different governance and compliance requirements globally, including in the United States, where the states are demanding and demonstrating their own requirements around addressing privacy and how companies should be handling the data. But the question doesn't go away. What is it that companies are holding their data as? Well, considering we are working in the SAP arena, majority of the companies are holding a good amount of their customer data in multiple platforms, but a good amount in SAP systems also. So what are the things we need to look into? So from that process perspective, if I have to look at the problem statement, I will say I need to look into this information from a couple of ways. One, help me find that information. Majority of the time, that's a big issue, to find the detail, where exactly that information is. And second, once I have identified it, what should I be doing with it? How can I take action toward that information? And this is what this slide primarily is referring to, in which we are talking about building a lifecycle management process and then building a roadmap, which is a recursive process to address all of your customer needs. So what does that cover? It covers implementing a data tiering or a segmentation process in your environment. It also covers building a process where you can find that information. It doesn't have to be only SAP. You will many times find this information could be stored in SAP and non-SAP system, even unstructured systems. And how do you find that information, correlate it, holistically view that information? This is something that Big ID do so amazing, and we're gonna show it to you. And Nimrod is gonna demonstrate, considering he has a full control of this whole solution, as a CTO of the company. Also, you will find there are a lot of other benefits that come along with this exercise. Your optimization of the performance. If your data is old, you do not have to keep it in the primary platform. What you will find that with these kind of tools, you are able to tier your information. And then as you are purging that information, you are gonna constantly optimize and improve the system performance, not to mention that you are saving on your hardwares, on your software costs and all. And also you are eliminating poor decision making. You are not counting on certain documentation sitting in some corner that was built 10 years ago. You have real-time information that can find that, and you can act on that information. And I cannot emphasize enough the fact that it's not a one-time activity. You have to continuously do this activity, and this is where you want to incorporate a process of automating it right from the get-go. I'll give you one quick insight into it, and after that I'm going to request Nimrod to give some details about how the Big ID tools work out here. DuPont, this particular organization, spent about $12 million in e-discovery cost. So many times you might not see it as a data owner, as running from IT, from functional side, or many times maybe there are some legal costs coming along that you might have an exposure to. But this is a real-time event where they spent $12 million just to find certain records that were mandated by the code. Now, how can this problem be solved efficiently? This is what I'm going to request Nimrod to cover. Nimrod, please.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for the intro, very interesting, and thanks for the opportunity to speak in this webinar. This is a very common challenge that we see. The organizations don't really know where their data. They don't know their data in the sense that they've been collecting a lot of information for many years. The big data technologies have allowed them to keep unlimited amounts of data. The data is being processed and moved around, whether it's through ETLs or through reporting and migration of data to the cloud and from the cloud. And so there's a very limited view now. No single person knows where the data is. And data has not been deleted, just never been deleted. And we see that from customer to customer. And so the discovery tools that were available until now, including the e-discovery tools, have not been successful in addressing that challenge. And that's been for a number of reasons. One reason is the fact that the existing solutions or the legacy solutions around data discovery really looked at a very restricted view of what is considered personal information. The definition, however, of what is personal has changed significantly due to the regulations. And now it's not only about finding specific types of data like a social security number or a credit card number. It's really any information associated with an individual. So the relevant information, the scope of the information has increased exponentially. And the tools that have been really built on regular expression-based discovery have very limited view of where that data is located. Also, those tools have not been able to, I think we moved to the next slide by mistake, but the tools have really not been able to understand whose data it is either. And that's another very important aspect of it, because you really want to be able to know, in order to be able to address some of those regulations, to know whose data it is that you're trying to find. Coverage has been very limited. So you've seen tools that, especially e-discovery, very focused on unstructured data, discovery in general, very siloed around big data or some other types of structured data, but very little in semi-structured and more advanced. So there are a magnitude of challenges in the current data technologies around being able to really understand where the data is and how to operationalize that information to make it applicable for your regulations, whether it's for privacy or whether it's for data retention, and handling the scale of the data. You can move to the next slide now. So Big ID takes a very unique approach to that challenge, right? At the core of what Big ID is, we're a data discovery platform. We connect to everything you have. That includes structured databases, unstructured data sources like Windows file shares or Unix file shares, semi-structured NoSQL databases, big data repositories like Hadoop or Hive, data lakes, but also business applications like SAP and other business applications, messaging, etc. So there's no really limit to the data sources that the Big ID can discover. If we don't have a data source for it now, we'll build one or give you an SDK to build your own. And then we provide insights and intelligence around that data, cataloging all the information, building a full catalog of all the data, all the metadata that you have, all of the business metadata, the operational metadata, classifying that information to understand what type of data you have there, clustering it so that you understand where you have similar and duplicate data, and then correlating it back to an individual so you have a business perspective of the data that you can connect or correlate the data back to a business entity or a business user or a consumer or an employee, and understand more about the data. This is served as a platform for automatic discovery, and on top of that platform, we keep an open set of APIs that allow us to integrate with other tools and build additional applications on top of this data intelligence platform. And that includes data privacy apps for maintaining and handling the privacy processes and procedures, like subject access requests, like consent governance. It includes data protection apps that help you manage the risk, understand open access if you have any, notify breaches, and so forth. And it also includes applications for data perspective, right? Data, and that includes data retention integration with tools that SAP provides. It includes understanding data quality, metadata exchange, etc. Next slide. We take a very, very unique approach in terms of data discovery. We call it discovery in depth. And really the principle behind it is that there is no one single method of discovery that could catch all the types of data that you have and help you and give you a full picture about the data. And that's where a lot of tools in the past and in the future have failed, because they've focused on a single method for discovery. The foundation, or the legacy and the traditional way of classifying data was always regular expression based and pattern matching, which is important to find very specific, well-defined types of data. And this has been kind of the de facto standard in the past 15 years. But this method is very limited to very specific types of information that have a very distinctive pattern to it. It can help you find personally identifiable information like credit card numbers, but it can't really help you find contextual information like names or dates of birth or addresses that are more unstructured in their nature. And really, to identify them, you need to understand the context of the data. So you need to have machine learning to provide more context-based discovery and classification. That is good, but it doesn't help you understand what type of data is it. What is the context of the whole document? And so we've added a layer of cluster analysis that finds similar data and duplicate data across very large data sets and help you find clusters of similar data that you can treat similarly and apply consistent policies. And then on top of that, we also provide context-based correlation, which allows you to get business perspective or a business context to the data and correlate it back to an individual or a consumer or an employee or a business entity or even a product code. Any type of entity, business entity that you manage either in your CRM system or your HR system or even in your MDM system. And that allows you to find more data associated with that individual or that business entity, just like the use case that Deepak you've mentioned around not being able to find half of the data that you have. That can help you kind of broaden the definition of what is interesting business information and be able to discover it.
Right, Nimrod, and I think you have raised a very good point out there. This slide, and summarizes the fact that, finding data, or e-discovery has got so many components into it. Number one, to understand the attribute, where exactly my information could be located from an architectural perspective, and then in quantifying that information. And not only that, when the event comes for a specific record, you are able to pinpoint where exactly that information is. I think as we go into the demo, I think it's going to become a lot more clear what is the unique proposition of Big ID is in this situation. But I would like to take another macro view of how we visualize data these days. What are the elements of data? If you have, we are constantly aggregating information, right? Whether it is on-premise or on a cloud-based platform. But, we have structured, unstructured, we might have transactional, we might have analytics kind of data. We can segment it further, whether it is operational data or functional data or finance-related data and all. But again, if you look at the elements, if you have to address it from different ways, we have to address the volume factor, meaning the data is really, really growing. With the age, you have to build a tiering process no matter where you are. Even as we say we are moving to cloud, you still have to build a tiering strategy to address your requirements. I'm listing some of the tools, especially in SAP, that are fully integrated to address those requirements. For those of you, who already know about archiving, ILM is a tool that is able to sit on the top of any of your S4, Suite on HANA, ECC, SRM, CRM systems, and it is able to divide and define the residence and the retention requirements for you. We further look into the data quality in this whole process, and quality is about, majority of the time we are looking at the master data quality of the system. And in there we say, how good are our master data record, whether it is from duplicity, consistency, compliance, or governance perspective. Now, we have multiple tools in the SAP bag, including the Solex solution like a Big ID, but information steward, data services, ADM tools are the prime things that come to the mind right now. Not to minimize the fact that governance is so much important these days. You are starting your business processes with master data records, and that's where master data governance come into play. And in the interest of time, I'm going to quickly move further with compliance, but let's address this piece out here, the privacy. And we have listed out here it as a privacy plus, primarily for the fact that we started our story, our conversation with you with saying that, hey, it is an amazing tool to address your data privacy requirements, the Big ID. But as Nimrod has mentioned, it has so many other applications, so many other utilizations. It is a holistic e-discovery tool that you can deploy in your enterprise, and it can connect to, Nimrod, correct me if I'm wrong. It can connect to more than 65 different platforms. Is that correct, or is my number now?
I would say even more, close to 100 different
Okay.
connectors. And also, yeah, middleware like Presto or Denodo that allow you to connect to even further larger number of connectors. Yep.
Awesome. So this tool can be a holistic e-discovery tool for you, and not to address the fact that you might be also having an unstructured information, whether it is documents with SharePoints and all, and you're storing that information in OpenText. Now, how does it all relate together? Why am I talking about it? We are talking from a perspective of providing a solution, providing an end-to-end solution to you using these combined products. And I'd like to share one use case with you out here. See, if we are able to utilize Big ID to address all of your requirements, your use cases could be related with e-discovery. Your use cases could be related with legal holds. Your use cases could be related to privacy and all, or risk management. Big ID will be able to help you search that information. I'm going to show you how it is able to search all the details from SAP and the non-SAP platform. But then this is where Big ID has its unique proposition. It finds that information. You're going to say, well, great, you helped me find it. How do I act on it? How do I remediate that information? How do I do that, especially in the SAP system? And this is where you have this tool in the SAP environment called the SAP ILM. It can borrow that information from what you have generated out of Big ID, ingest that information, and address all of your requirements from legal hold, from data destruction, from any kind of policy management. So it connects this whole tool together, from fetching that information to acting on it. And also I have listed out here OpenText, which is another content management tool. We have another slide that we are not showing in the interest of time. You will find that Big ID can do all kind of search on all the Office tools and applications for any kind of structured and unstructured content out there. So if you already have those tools, consider that you already have an answer on that. But many times in the SAP arena, you're using tools like OpenText. We are able to search that context also, the unstructured information, and build a sustained process of continuously addressing those requirements in a holistic way in the system. Nimrod, do you want to add something to it?
Oh, I think that it kind of highlights the synergy, right, between and the need for discovery. One of the things we've discovered over the past 4 years since starting Big ID is that even though customers wanted a solution for privacy or a solution for security, essentially what they were really looking for was a discovery framework to help them solve those problems. And that discovery framework really helped them address their privacy needs, their security needs, also their data retention needs. And that's also the synergy between Big ID and the SAP landscape of solutions, right?
Yes, exactly right. So as you can see, I just wanted to summarize what are all the different things from a discovery perspective this tool can assist you and link it all together. Nimrod, I'm going to request you to go through these slides, a couple of those things, and then we can get into the demo if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, so at the core of what Big ID does, right, is that data discovery. The first thing we do once we connect to those data sources, we scan them. First thing we do is catalog all the information. So you know what type of information you have where. And that includes all of the tables, the columns, the types of the columns, the technical metadata associated with them, the files, the directories, the operational metadata associated with who's the owner of those files or what type of access to those files have. And also the business metadata, which is kind of which has to do with the type of data that is stored there. What is it used for? Is it used for this purpose or for other purposes? That's all collected in the catalog. Once we catalog the data, we provide classification. So we tell you what type of data you have. And as I mentioned, when we talked about the discovery in depth, we have a very broad set of discovery methods and classifiers that we could use, whether it's the traditional regular expression based, whether it's looking at the metadata and classifying by column name, that's also a possibility, but all the way through very advanced machine learning based named entity recognition, document classifiers, a very broad set of classification that can really give you insights about data. Cluster analysis is the ability to find similar and duplicate data and take action on them, label them, and apply a policy enforcement across those clusters rather than having to deal with separate files. This is a very effective way of managing large volumes of data. And then the last method is the correlation. And that is the ability to correlate the data back to an individual. All of this goes into an inventory that consolidates and harmonizes all the data and makes it available for very simple search and analysis by person, by the type of data, by the data source, location, application, etc., without having to requiring any very advanced skills of any kind. Really very basic analysts can use this UI. And it's also important to mention that BigID does that without having to install any agents on those data sources, without copying the data and exposing everything through a very well-documented set of APIs. Other capabilities that apply, that come into play, are also the ability to then, once you have that layer of discovery, you can apply, we have apps that help you take action. For example, subject access requests, right? So you can request the data of an individual, right? Very similar to the e-discovery use case. Find me all the data of user X across all of those different data sources, or entity X, or business user, or business entity, or product ID. And we can find that data across all of those different data sources. We can apply policies that trigger alerts that go, if you don't want to have certain type of data in a certain type of server, we can raise an alert when BigID discovers that. Or we have a set of out-of-the-box policies to discover certain types of data that are relevant for certain regulations like CCPA or GDPR, etc.
Very good. Thank you, Nimrod. So, I'm gonna, take this amazing functionality that is available and say, how does it relate to, let's say, lifecycle management, data lifecycle management, also called retention management, and in the SAP arena. So, from a retention management perspective, we have our policies, retention policies, which are country specific. United States might hold financial data for 7 years. In Europe, it could be 8 years, but Mexico could be 10 years. So basically, your record information management need to be mapped, number one, understood, number two, mapped to SAP, to the system. But then we have to find out where that data is. And this is where we are able to identify, using a BigID tool, okay, based on the age, based on multiple characteristics, where that information is stored in the system. Once we have that information, we are now able to deploy those policies, and there could be certain kind of exceptions happening. If there is a legal dispute going on, you want to create certain kind of legal holds, you want to hold that. Or certain other criteria could come into play where there could be a sensitive data from audit compliance that you want to hold it for a longer period of time. But it doesn't go without saying that if you have to defensively dispose certain kind of data, you want to address it from your core systems, SAP, non-SAP, all put together. But then you also have to address it from your unstructured system, OpenText, SharePoint, your network drives, your folder locations and all. It has to be a holistic approach. And this is what you're able to address that, in one full swoop. So I want to just give you, for those of you who do not know what the SAP tool is, along with BigID, there's a product from SAP called SAP ILM. And this is an evolution of the data management feature and function that is available in SAP, where you tier the data, and then retention management is able to help you define the life of that record. You are also able to the tool helps you decommission the data. And again, BigID comes into play at that point, because even many companies have these challenges saying, I have all these legacy applications running. These tools are so old. The OS is not supported. The database is not supported. The application doesn't have any people who know how to run it. We can export that data, migrate that data over to an SAP ILM tool, both SAP and non-SAP. And Big ID on the top of it is able to search that information and again govern your compliance and e-discovery requirement. And this is what the whole holistic process is. Step number one, tier the data, store it onto a secondary storage or a third-party storage medium, but in a holistic manner. You still have seamless access to that information. Your users go to the same transaction in SAP and same reports, and they are able to address all of your requirements. And if you have to address it from a compliance process perspective, you are looking at addressing the requirements, whether it is from identifiers, from tagging, from retention, and then comes the remediation process that includes masking, sequestering, redactions, and all, and not to ignore the fact that you have to dispose the data. So step number one, identifying, tagging, retention. This is where Big ID comes into play. Step number 4 and 5, this is where SAP ILM comes into play. And we have different processes to establish the same thing. In the interest of time, I'm going to move into the demo to give you some insights about how this whole process works in the system. Nimrod, you want to add something while I'm prepping the system, or are we good?
No, I think we're good. We could show in the UI kind of the concept that I was referring to, right? So Big ID is kind of gives you that dashboard. The unique aspect of Big ID is being able not only to discover, catalog, and classify, but also to correlate back to a business entity. The data, it calculates a risk score for all of the data elements, and then connect to a very, very broad set of systems, very broad coverage. We can talk about that separately. The cataloging provides full cataloging of all the data. This should not be confused with other catalogs. It basically just aggregates all of the technical, operational, and business metadata. You can see all the columns and the information stored there. It also, I think I lost kind of control over this. Yeah. And this catalog contains both the data where sensitive information is found, but also where but not only. So all the data is registered here. You could filter by where it contains sensitive information. You could go into a database and see what's found there, and that's where you find all the technical metadata and the operational metadata as well as the business metadata. The classification that classifies all the data that I mentioned. And you could see that we have both data classifiers that look at the data itself, and we have a very broad set of those classifiers there that you can see. We have metadata classifiers. We also have document classifiers that look at the entirety of a document and tell you what type of document this is. Is this a legal document? Is this an invoice? Is this a financial credit card application? We come out of the box with a large set, and you could train on your own. Cluster analysis that shows the different types of clusters of data. This is today is mostly focused on unstructured data, but we are also adding the capability to cluster database tables and columns as well. And you could see the type of information that was found, and you can then take action. Tag, that's the tagging that Deepak was mentioning. And then the correlation, that ability to look at the data and find all of the information similar to that. And with Big ID, that correlation capability is unique because it allows Big ID to connect to your MDM system or to your master, your ERP system, or any table within your SAP environment that contains information about an entity that you care about. And then it finds that information across all of the data estate. And I think, Deepak, you are going to show some of the examples for that. But you could see that Big ID finds hundreds of different tables that contain these values, these specific types of information.
Right. And Nimrod, this is where folks, what Nimrod has raised the point out there. I like to give you a quick example on that. Let's say that we have a situation where we want to address, a retention requirement and an e-discovery requirement for a particular customer. We all know the customer table is KNA1, and we enter a customer number Kunar out here from SAP and say, hey, where is this information located? Well, typically, what are we going to say? Well, if I have a customer, let's see, I might be using the customer for sales order, for invoicing, maybe I'm using that for delivery, shipment, ship to docs and all. And we are thinking logically, and we are trying to document and find out all the details. Here is one insight that I found. When I used Big ID for doing these kind of sample analysis, I found that it gave me an insight into the areas, into the tables that were all across the board. For example, consider this. We have this particular customer record sitting out there in your Z tables in the system. And granted, this is a demo system that we are using. It is now itemizing that it could be sitting as a customer number, or it could be sitting as a text field sitting somewhere else. And it is referencing you with the level of confidence. Hey, I found this information. If you are going to account for that detail, you remember I talked about the $12 million that DuPont spent early on to find that detail? This is the kind of information that will safeguard you when the situation comes. And this is what this tool is able to do and link it all together. But the good part that I find further is that once we have that information all accounted for and all collected and filtered out, you'll ask the next thing again. What next? How can I do all of those things and address those things? It provides you with multiple tools to export, get the details out. And I'm going to take you onto a screen on the other side of the SAP system where I can show you how I'm able to bring that information back into SAP using the SAP's ILM tool. Of course, SAP ILM tool has got its policies, audit areas and all. And one of the things that I wanted to showcase you was I have a customer on this side. Let's say that I have a customer based on which I wanted to search this information. So I'm logging on to another system out here just to show you that I did a subject access request out here. And I had a request where I said, well, my customer, Agri-Foods, which is named customer number 10203, is in the system, and I need to find out where exactly or what kind of transaction, what kind of records do I have with this particular customer. And what we showed you out here, it gave me an insight that I can export as an Excel too. And guys, this is something looking more technical, but I just wanted to show you the capability of this tool. You must be, for those of you who are, with SAP, you see VBRP, CE1. These are all SAP tables that Big ID told me up front. These are the tables where this customer information is sitting in that environment. What did I do? I took this information, I went into SAP ILM, and now I initiated the legal hold management process. As you can see out here, in the legal hold management, I went through the e-discovery Big ID process. I was able to now validate using those functions for Agri-Food and validate, okay, these are all the transactions that I have in my ILM system, where they are. Basically now I have, from Big ID, I got a level of confidence and the accounting information out there. I was able to link them together, identify the documents, identify also the linked attachments that, look, I have got additional documents sitting along with that. And since I have all of that information, I can now go into my ILM system back and hold the data. And even if I have to do, in certain cases, run the destruction process, I can run the whole destruction process end to end. I can pick out, okay, these are all the records that have come through this retention policies for the destruction. I initiate the destruction process and move. And here you have all of your areas and all of those records addressed holistically. And as I'm mentioning, early on also, that this could be a recursive process. This is not a one-time activity. You can continue to do so, at multiple levels and see the benefit out of it. Nimrod, do you want to add some more to the demo, or shall we cover some other content?
Yeah, maybe we could go back to the Big ID console, and I could show some of the capabilities that are really enabling this, what you've shown.
Okay.
So yeah, so that ability to go and find that unique ID, right, that you've mentioned is really triggered or fueled by the correlation capability. And I think it's based on the SAP ID and finding those across all of those different. And this is really an example of how we also have built additional apps on top of this data intelligence to fulfill specific use cases. So very similar to the use case that you're now describing around data retention, we've built apps that help with subject access requests that you've shown, app that can help you document the business flows that are using the data on top of the catalog, whether it's the HR recruiting processes or sales processes. And those are more business focused documentation of the data. And so that can help you with that. And also applications for data protection and data perspective. And also you could build your own apps as well. And I think that one of the things that is very important to remember is that everything you see here is exposed through APIs. And we have an application framework that allows you to build your own apps and integrations that would live natively within the platform and could exchange information and with other tools like ILM, like SAP catalog and data intelligence that we are building already today. The SAP SPG, the privacy modules, are also using Big ID to fulfill subject access requests and find data in a similar way as well.
Very good. I'm gonna take another dimension into saying, for those of you who are moving towards your S4 project, this is the fishtail slide from SAP that talks about what are the different things that you need to address in your S4 initiative and how it all comes together for you to move into these areas. So you will find in this screen that the SAP mentions that you have to address these requirements from master data governance, data services perspective. But even more, what you're looking at on the screen out here is that how SAP is qualifying this information on the fact that you have to also address this information from lifecycle management perspective. So if you look at this slide, they're talking about information lifecycle management. We covered that right now. You have nearlining, you have document access, which is open text. This is open text again. Not only that, even afterwards, you have information lifecycle management referenced out here. My point out here is you are looking at data quality, governance, you're looking at information lifecycle management at two separate stages. In all of those areas, you will find the combination of Big ID and these components will yield you a really, really strong return. But then the question might come down to that you might ask that, what is the timing for it? When is it that I have to do it? See, S4 initiative and now has been pushed through 2027. For those of you might say that, okay, it might go a little bit further, but for the most part, it's 2027. Now, if we track our steps back for having the system application up and running and all consolidated, implementing the solution does take a good amount of time. Prepping and procuring, making sure you have the funding, making sure you have the right sizing, tiering and all those things come into play. You have the right sizing of the system. Where does that bring you? It brings you 2020 and 2021, where you have to do these exercises right now. The tools like ILM, the tools like Big ID are relevant right now for you to prepare these things so that you are ready for moving towards your S4 transformation. And this is the important piece that we really want to emphasize out there, that customers are looking into it, customers are implementing these solutions, and we would like to share with you some of the success stories in that area. So Nimrod, I'm going to request you to share a couple of these stories, and then as we progress based on timing, we can also address our attendees' questions.
Yeah, sure. So these are a few examples of organizations that have that are using Big ID to solve some of those challenges. Many of those challenges relate to privacy and data governance use cases that basically triggered that process or funded it, if I may say so. But then in most of those cases, if not all of them, those organizations are now looking at how they can leverage that investment across the board for other purposes outside of privacy, for data, mostly for data governance, right? The CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act, was a very dramatic driver this year to help automate subject access requests, discover and map data, personal information, and drive that across the board. Very diverse set of data sources that in the past were really out of scope for compliance purposes, and suddenly got into the compliance scope, and without any real kind of legacy security and data discovery tools to support them, like Hive and databases. Even SAP in the past, very focused, very in scope for regulation purposes, was not really handled by the outside systems for discovery and security, and now they had to deal with that. So Big ID was able to address all of those data sources, millions of individual consumer that had to be managed and reconciled to support those functions, very large scale.
So
the retail space, yeah.
Go ahead. I was just saying that these are all different industries where you have implemented these solutions in different ways, and you're also quantifying the amount of data that was addressed by Big ID. But I'll let you explain that thing further.
Yeah, so the first one that we were talking about was really more in the multimedia and telecommunication space. A lot of interest also from the retail space as well. Challenges around data discovery and data governance, right? The retail space has been collecting unlimited amounts of data about their consumers, and suddenly they need to be accountable for that information. They need to be able to delete the data if someone wants to be deleted. They need to be able to retain and to dispose of records that are obsolete. And here also some of the systems that we had to cover were the SAP system, but also cloud systems like Google Drive, legacy systems like DB2, business applications like ServiceNow. Very diverse set of systems. And again, very similar. The foundation, the baseline is discovery and cataloging of the data, and then being able to also operationalize some of the subject access requests there. And again, very large scale, very distributed organizations, very large data sets.
Okay, right. And I'm going to cover a couple of pieces out here. I think it's a similar example. Do you mind, Nimrod, if we
Sure.
the time we move on to the next one? One of the things you will find that once Big ID has found you the data and you are addressing this data with the different tool set like ILM, you will find not all the data can be addressed seamlessly. See, you will find the data is incomplete, and it'll say, well, I cannot archive or purge this data because it has some business processes attached to it. Well, what are those business processes? How can I address that? That goes into the realm of transactional data governance. And this is where we are able to now quantify all the data and its financial implications if you do not address it. So not only in a combined approach, we are able to find the data, we are able to address and locate this information, but as we are remediating that information, as we are doing this information implementing in your environment, if certain data is not archivable, how can we make it archivable? What are the implications of not addressing this data? For example, here is an example of a company, not realizing a revenue of about $9 million just because they did not had proper transactional data governance implemented. These are the kind of insights we find in the system, and we are able to address all of those things in a holistic manner using tools like Big ID and ILM together. And for that, I'd like to show you one, an example of a company where they had 30 terabytes of your database size, and they were growing at around half a terabyte every month. And the plan was to go to S4HANA, and very quickly realized that the HANA hardware is just not available for them to address this big of a requirement that they have in their system. As we put all of those processes together, we were able to reduce about 85% of their overall database footprint. We were able to bring their system down to around 7 to 11 terabytes with 11 terabyte instance. And this has all happened as we looked at this problem in a holistic manner and addressed all of those pieces for you. So I hope you find this webcast, very important and valuable, and provide you with some insights. I'm gonna now also ask all of you that if you have some questions, please email us, put us on the questionnaire box, and I'm gonna let Katie give a quick introduction of Auritas as well as Big ID in the meantime. Katie?
All right, thanks so much, Deepak and Nimrod. Like Deepak mentioned, before we go into our Q&A, I just want to briefly introduce who Auritas and Big ID are. I noticed there are quite a few new people here that I haven't seen before, so welcome, and I hope that everyone found the webinar very informative today. So a little bit about Auritas. We've been around for about 15 years now. We were founded in 2003. We're based here out of Orlando, Florida. And the next slide here, you'll see the, the Intelligent Enterprise slide from SAP, which I'm sure a few of you on the call have seen before. You can see here that the Intelligent Enterprise features 3 critical components: the application layer, the analytics layer, and the data management layer. At the bottom of the screen here in the red, you'll see that Auritas fits perfectly into that data management layer. Most of our solutions leverage EIM, ILM, and ECM technologies. We're actually the only company that can handle your data quality, data volume, data privacy compliance, data governance, and linked document management needs. Typically, a lot of our customers that come to us will face challenges around data volume, data quality, and compliance. We also do handle unstructured data through our partnership with OpenText for maximum business insights. And lastly, a few of our more popular solutions are data archiving, legacy system decommissioning, SAP Data Hub, and data privacy solutions. Here on the next slide, I'll give you guys a brief introduction to Big ID as well. Big ID redefines data privacy and protection, helping organizations know their data for privacy, protection, and perspective. They were founded in 2016, and Big ID has reached almost $150 million in funding, with the latest round from earlier this year. They're one of the 2019 World Economic Forum's Tech Pioneers, Business Insider's top 14 AI startups to know, and were awarded Best Privacy Solution by the Info Security Global Excellence Awards in 2020. Big ID's leading discovery and depth technology helps enterprises solve for data privacy, security, and governance challenges. It looks like we do have a few questions here from the Q&A, so I'll briefly go through those, and we'll try to go through as many as we have here. So the first question, it looks like it will be for you, Nimrod, and it says, to which systems can Big ID connect to? So I'll pass that on over to you.
Yeah, thanks. So at Big ID, we're really focusing on connecting to as many systems as possible. So it's an ongoing process. We probably have the biggest group in engineering responsible for connecting all of to new data sources. We have close to 100, as I mentioned, different systems that we connect to. That includes all of the relational databases: Oracle, MS SQL, MySQL, Postgres, HANA, which is considered a relational or structured data, semi-structured data sources like Couchbase or MongoDB or Cassandra, big data repositories like Hadoop, Hive, HBase. For example, cloud storage like Google Drive, Office 365, which are unstructured, but also structured cloud storage like Snowflake, like Redis, like Redshift on AWS. We support almost everything running inside AWS, whether it's RDS or S3 buckets or EMR. We support everything in Azure, whether it's Azure blob storage or file storage, object stores, business applications like SAP, like Salesforce, like Workday, like NetSuite. We have a very broad set of those different applications. So very, very broad. We also support kind of middleware like Presto and Denodo and SAP Data Hub and MuleSoft that allow you to connect to other systems and through those middleware platforms scan those systems as well. So the options are almost unlimited. We also provide an SDK and an API that you can build your own connectors. And we are actually introducing also a developer community where you can share your developed solutions and integrations with our developer community.
Awesome. Thanks, Nimrod. The next question, it looks like, is what other SAP solutions does Big ID integrate with? And I'll pass that back over to you.
Yeah, sure. So, we're a Solex partner of SAP. We are a part of two business units. One is the Office of the CFO, where we are bundled or actually sold standalone, not bundled, but integrated with SPG, which is the privacy solution. So we provide, SAP provides privacy management. Big ID provides more of the privacy governance by connecting to the actual data sources and helping SAP fulfill data subject requests automatically. We're also integrated into or a part of the platform and technology business, where we integrate with the SAP Data Hub or data intelligence. And we're building more integrations now into MDG and into the data intelligence catalog. This is coming this year as well. We're already working on those integrations. Apart from that, there's a lot of synergy with other tools. For example, the CDC, Gigya. Gigya provides data consumer identity management and preference management services. Big ID can integrate with Gigya or with CDC and provide preference governance, meaning that we map it to the actual data that is stored either within the SAP systems or outside of the SAP systems, on-prem or in the cloud, and make sure that the data that you are collecting actually received the proper consent as registered and collected by Gigya or CDC. So there's a lot of synergy there as well.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Nimrod. It looks like we have one more question here, and it says, metadata lineage is a key issue in SAP systems. Can we leverage metadata lineage via Big ID?
Yeah, I can take that. So we are working right now with MDG and the data intelligence teams on this type of integration to be able to natively provide that integration. There is a lot, of value that can be gained from the scanning. As you've seen right now, we provide a lot of visibility into those platforms. So yes, if you have a specific use case that you think that you need help with, definitely they reach out to us and to Deepak, because I believe that there is a way to help on that aspect as well.
All right, awesome. It looks like that is all the time we have for Q&A today. But thank you so much for everyone for jumping on and spending some of your morning with us. I hope that you found this session really informative, and we will see you guys next month for our next webinar. Thanks again. I hope everyone has a good afternoon.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.